Coming up, I give you my unfiltered, self-righteous, smug thoughts on some of the big boys of YouTube and Twitch. His opinions are boring at best. There's just always the normie consensus on matters. Plus, some of the political creators, not just that he might have a bunch of extremist fans, which I think he does, but like genuinely I think if you engage in his content a lot, you're committing self-harm. And finally, the antagonists. The only thing worse than the fact that someone actually bothers to make the garbage he does is the fact that there are people willing to watch. Wait. Before I get into this, before I line these people up like cattle and rate them like Amazon products, I just want to make sure that you keep in mind that for the most part, this is not super personal, okay? So don't get too butthurt if I don't like something about your guy. Ultimately, it doesn't really mean anything other than I probably view you as a lesser human being. But that's okay. I'm just doing this because I like sharing my opinion about stuff, and it's a bit of fun, right? Also, I've only included creators that I've watched enough to feel comfortable in saying that I have a general understanding of their shtick. Obviously, I've watched some of these people more than others, so I'll have stronger opinions, or I'll speak longer about certain people. I'll leave timestamps in the description, so you can skip if I ramble about a person you don't care about for too long. Okay? Okay. Alright, let's start with some big boys, basically people who have large, broad fan bases and sort of deal in general entertainment. Starting with the big kahuna himself, Pewdiepie! Now, obviously I've talked a lot about him on this channel already, and going through some of my older videos, I wouldn't be surprised if some of you think that I really hate this guy. Like, damn, I was pretty harsh. PewDiePie is really stupid, like astonishingly so actually. He might be the stupidest person with over 1,000 subscribers. Like, I don't know, why was I that mean? I have no idea. I think it's because so many people on YouTube were just like coddling him about every single dumb thing that he's done. And I was kind of sick of that narrative of like, oh, poor PewDiePie. Why won't the mainstream media just leave him alone? It wouldn't surprise me if some of you came away thinking I'm just a salty hater or something, but to be honest, like, I don't hate him at all. And I'll let you guys in on a little secret. Back in like when he first started blowing up, when was that? Like around 2011, 2012? I actually watched him a fair bit. You know, he would yell at barrels and he had a funny Swedish accent. Barrels! It was like easy to consume, mindless, funny shit. And you know, in some ways, he's actually kind of like an inspirational or like admirable figure. You know, I don't think he's like a super talented person, and yet, over the years, you know, he's remained relevant, he's remained at the top of the game, right? Even through all the controversies and all that, he just keeps chugging along. And whatever you think of the guy, like, that's not easy. He's like clearly pretty hardworking. A lot of people would have broken before that, especially because of some of the controversies. But yeah, obviously I'm not like 16 years old, so his content doesn't really appeal to me much anymore. And of course, it would be remiss of me not to mention that he has, in his content, said a lot of dumb stuff about controversial things, but I've been over that plenty of times on this channel. So yep, to begin with, PewDiePie from me gets a D. Now let's do the other Felix, XQC. Probably the biggest Twitch streamer right now. XQC is really funny in clips. Very entertaining clips, like clip god.
Cheeto.
Unfortunately, I cannot actually watch the stream for more than like 5 minutes. Like, I know he's gotten in a little bit of drama lately because he's apparently super toxic in Among Us, but he's always been super toxic. Listen, I see enough whiny bitches on Overwatch already. I don't want to see a streamer doing it too. Also, his chat, absolutely cancerous. Like, Twitch should have warning signs around it. It's probably like as carcinogenic as Chernobyl.
50,000 people used to live here.
But yeah, as I said, very funny in clips, very memeable. But yeah, I actually can't go anywhere near his stream, so both Felixes getting the D. I guess since we're talking about a big streamer like XQC, I want to talk a little bit about so-called react content on Twitch, because I think there's some scummy stuff going on there. So I'm sure a lot of you know, but for those who don't, a lot of streamers will sort of like sit on stream and watch YouTube videos and like give their reaction or whatever. Now, I completely understand the appeal of this. Like a YouTube video can become more fun to watch if you see someone else's reaction to it at the same time, as well as chats, you know? It becomes like a communal thing. You can see how other people respond to it. You can see whether their thoughts match yours, whatever. So I think this actual practice of watching a YouTube video on stream is actually mostly fine, even though it may not be necessarily fair use, because oftentimes there's tons of dead air where the streamer is not really saying anything, there's no commentary or critique, the content isn't really being transformed in a substantial way. And I've mentioned before, I think in my video about Pokemon and Leafy, basically I said something like applying fair use standards that you would normally apply to a typical YouTube video and applying those same standards to a Twitch stream is a bit unfair, because live on the fly it's very hard to react enough such that the content is transformative, right? The streaming medium is very different. And I don't think this whole concept of streamers reacting to internet content should be completely done away with, mostly because I don't think it's particularly harmful to the original creators. I don't think they're a direct competitor to a YouTube video. So if someone watches my video on their stream, I don't think that makes it less likely for people on YouTube to watch it overall. However, there are a couple of practices linked to this watching videos on stream thing that I think is really shitty. I'll start with the not so shitty one first, then I'll go to the really shitty one. So firstly, so many streamers will watch a video on stream, watch a large chunk of it barely reacting, and then never link it in the chat or never mention what the name of the video is or who it's by. If you watch it full screen, it's not really obvious. You don't see the title, you don't see the name of the creator. Now, I think this is really shitty, especially if it's made by a smaller creator. I mean, you just spent time using someone else's content to enhance your own content. You're essentially, actually enhance is way too generous at this point. Essentially, for that time being, your content is nothing more than theirs, rebroadcasted for your profit. Now, as I said, I don't really have an issue with this in most cases. However, just leave them some credit, man. Like, I think that's the least a person should do. I think that's just shitty practice not to. I know that almost everyone who watches stuff on Twitch will do this, where they won't link it, they won't go out of their way to make it obvious what they're watching. I don't know, I find that really weird. That you sat there for like half an hour, and you don't like instinctively feel like some sort of obligation to just, link the video. Now, look, that video did get exposure, and some people will go out of their way to find it. But most people, if they're anything like me, are way too lazy for that. Even if they may have been interested in the person's content. I think giving direct credit after you just use someone's content is kind of nice, right? And yeah, I mean, I am a little bit salty because this happened to me. So the streamer Nim watched my video about Twitch streamers and parasocial relationships on stream, and he watched like 90% of it. He seemed to mostly enjoy it, and chat certainly seemed to enjoy it from what I could tell. Farmed a few lol W's. And look, yeah, I did get like a small influx of viewers from him watching it on stream. From people who went out of their way and looked for it. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But hey, if he put it in the chat, that could have been more, right? I saw like a couple of chat messages of people being like, hey, this is really interesting, but who Omega Lol is this? And just because, it overall might work out in the sense that you still get like a boost in viewers, I still think it's like kind of a scummy thing to do. I think if it became more of a common practice to give credit to the people you're essentially profiting off of, that would be kind of cool. Okay, now that isn't even like a really big deal, the giving credit thing. Like, okay, whatever. There's something way worse that happens, and XQC and Asmongold are two people that are especially egregious with this practice. Basically, is when people rip their reaction from their Twitch stream, or reaction in quotation marks because usually they're barely reacting, and just upload it unedited on their YouTube channel, with all the dead air and everything. So essentially re-uploading someone else's video on your channel with your face in the corner. Now, this is particularly an issue on YouTube because your re-upload now directly competes with the original creator's video in the recommended feed and stuff. I think it's especially bad because they'll have like the name of the video in the title, so it like messes up with the original video's SEO shit. I mean, I don't think you could remotely claim that those reaction videos are transformative or fair use. I think technically fair use principles are a lot more stringent than people actually think they are, but often companies or people will just let things slide for the most part. Actually, Tom Scott has a really good video about this, and I'm sure Legal Eagle probably does too. Leaving aside the strict legality of things, like at least pay lip service to like the spirit or idea of fair use in some capacity, right? At least get your editors to clip out the parts where you're literally not saying anything. Now, of course, that would mean that a lot of those videos end up being about a minute long instead of 40 minutes long. But then, hey, don't upload videos where you don't really react much. Even though, again, in some cases it might work out for the original content creator, like they might get a temporary boost from a larger creator watching their thing. In the long term, I think it could harm them. And I feel like this is a discussion that happened like 4 or 5 years ago in the commentary community on YouTube or whatever, because there was like this huge influx of React people, and I'm pretty sure like people came to the consensus that yeah, this is a shitty practice, and those React YouTubers got bullied the fuck out. Like, I'm pretty sure Idubbbz had a content cop on one of those dudes. But anyway, this is another video for another time. I can go more in depth and explain properly my issues of why I think it's harmful and stuff. Alright, I'm going on too many tangents. I need to move on. Tier list. Now, Critical. I think I literally started watching him, or I first came across him like 10 years ago. Critical is a very charismatic guy. There's a couple of things he does really, really well. And the first one is, I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about when I describe this. He'll have like these really funny run-on sentences when he like off the cuff seems to just randomly put in body parts when describing something. I think that's like a pretty unique gimmick or whatever. It's like a pretty funny thing. Also, he has some really good stories. And he's really good at telling them too. There's one that particularly sticks out in my mind is when he had a urethral swab. Now, despite that, the negatives, most of his videos is like day-to-day content. It's just like his opinions about random either drama or games or whatever. And his opinions are, I don't know how to describe them, boring at best. They're just always the normie consensus on matters. Like whatever most people are currently saying on the internet at that time, that's what he'll be saying too. And unfortunately, that can often be kind of dumb. Like when he made that "Why Can't Games Just Be Fun" video. Listen, I understand that someone's got to give the normie consensus, someone's got to be that guy, but I don't want to hear it. So yeah, for those reasons, I'd put Critical at a C. Alright, next up, video game Dunkey. I like Dunkey. I will say, like his serious videos where he actually has like points to make, and it's not just a complete meme, I like those a lot. I think even if I don't agree with his overall opinion, he has like a thought process that I can respect. And he conveys his opinions like in a pretty entertaining way, right? That's one thing I can really learn from him, I think, as like a content creator or whatever, is being able to leave the audience with like one or two clear takeaways, presented succinctly, concisely, and in a way that hits them hard and is entertaining. I think he's really, really good at that. However, a lot of like his more jokey videos, I just don't find funny. Some of them now and then are kind of funny, but most of the time if it's just like him goofing off in a game with his friends or something, it's like I'll watch 30 seconds and then click away. Also, he sometimes does this thing where I feel like he's sort of misrepresenting a situation or a game by like clipping things a certain way and building a narrative a certain way, which I feel is often unfair, but yeah, overall I quite like him. Has some absolute banger videos and a lot of them that are just like meh. So on the balance, I'll give Dunkey a strong B verging on an A. Alright, Idubbbz. Obviously best known for his content cops, which were pretty like remarkable things because they would genuinely shape how people view not just a certain creator but even certain topics. Notably for my channel, slurs, which I had a whole video criticizing him about. Overall, I quite like him. He seems like an entertaining guy. And even if I didn't always agree with what he was saying on the content cops, they were always fun to watch. I always respected like the level of work that went into it, the scripting, the set pieces, all that stuff. You know what's funny? I actually thought of making my Idubbbz slurs video like literally since the day after he made that content cop on 10 Mojo. And I'd literally been mulling it over for like a year and a half. I have no idea why it took me that long to finally get around to doing it. I have some regrets about that video. I think for the most part my arguments are largely pretty good, they hold up well. But there are a few things that I say that aren't quite right or I haven't worded quite right. Also, it needs to be like a lot shorter. It's 40 minutes long. It should have been like 20 to 25 minutes at most. Obviously the way it was presented, the visuals, all that, it could have been a lot better. That was literally like the first video I had spent like a substantial effort making. Unfortunately, I didn't have like a tight script. I just had some bullet points that I went off the cuff with. And I have particular regrets over that one because I think the arguments are really strong, mostly strong at least. And I think they struck a chord with a lot of people. And I feel like it could have been so much more if it was just a little bit tighter, presented better. It's still like one of my most popular videos, but I feel like it could have been so much more. Like I reckon it could have absolutely like taken off if I did a few things a little bit differently. But hey, it is what it is. It's too late now. Outside of the content cops, I don't really find his stuff that entertaining. He does like those crazy documentaries now, which is kind of cool. I saw Full Force, that was pretty good. Still seems like a funny, charismatic dude, but I just don't watch him that much. So for all of that, I'll give him a B. All right, next up, The Right Opinion. A very confident, very assertive name to give yourself. Unfortunately, that's just about the only respectable thing about him. Absolute F tier. He's unbelievably boring. He calls himself The Right Opinion, but I don't actually know any of his opinions because most of his 3-hour-long videos are just like exposition. It's just background info. This is how most of his videos go, okay? Oh, let's talk about this person's drama. Well, first we need to know a little bit about this person. Well, they were born in Canada in 1997 and they got big making Minecraft Let's Plays and on the YouTube platform. Well, What is YouTube? YouTube is a video sharing platform where people can, and it's like, oh my god, get to the point, please. Like, I think he had like an hour-long video about Alinity. I'm sorry, how? I thought my 18 minutes was a little long. I feel like there's just not that much there to talk about. I have no idea. But his videos are obviously very popular. They get on my recommended now and then. The reason I checked them out is because, yeah, they get on my recommended, and also people have commented saying that my content reminds them of his. I've gotten a couple comments like that, so I watched some of his stuff, and I was like, oh my god, if my stuff is that dreary, just shoot me, fam. Alright, just to reiterate, all these people are popular in their own right. They're obviously doing something correct. These are just my subjective feelings on content, okay? Alright, Filthy Frank. It's Filthy Frank. I think he is funny as fuck. Sometimes kinda hit and miss though. Obviously, a dead channel no longer uploads. He does his Joji music stuff, which not a big fan, I'll be honest. All the music sounds the same. It's just emo. Oh, I'm so sad. Miss me with that shit, fam. But yeah, he gave me a few laughs. I think it'll be a B. Actually, no, some of his stuff was way too filthy. Gotta go down to a C. Alright, NakeyJakey. Now, he obviously puts a lot of effort into his videos, but I have to say the humor I don't really jive with. It just feels very like millennial white guy Reddit humor. It's just not my thing. Like, he is funny at times, don't get me wrong. And I understand that it like reaches a broader audience, but I feel like all the constant jokes kind of clogs up the videos for me. Especially since I'm like more interested in what points he actually has to make about whatever he's talking about. It seems like he has fairly similar opinions about video games as I do, so that bumps him up a little. But you know what? Easy to watch. I'll sometimes get a couple chuckles here and there. And he'll occasionally say something kind of interesting, so I'll give him a solid B. Alright, H3H3. I feel like a lot of people are unfairly harsh on those guys, especially Ethan, it seems like. Which, I don't know, maybe he's like super scummy behind the scenes or something, but they seem alright to me. I think overall, they've been like a pretty positive influence on the YouTube platform or whatever. You know, they called out some shitty content. And if the subject matter, you know, the people they were making fun of were not very harmful, you know, they usually weren't needlessly cruel in their comedy. You know, it was a lot more lighthearted, and I think that's like a good thing. You know, at the time where they started getting big, I guess they kind of like pioneered that type of commentary. Before that, it was mostly just like someone playing Call of Duty talking about some shit. I will say, doesn't upload good stuff often enough, especially nowadays. The podcast just seems really boring. Obviously, it's been well documented at this point that Ethan does sometimes say some ill-informed, dumb stuff on that podcast. Apparently, they bought like a $9 million house recently, which is like, damn, I didn't know YouTube paid that well. Well, I guess they have like other sources of revenue as well, but Christ, good for them, I guess. Anyway, all things considered, okay, they did a bunch of good stuff, or they pioneered a bunch of stuff, and they used to be pretty good, but now they're kind of boring, so a B or C? C, I guess. Yeah, C. As you can tell, there's a very precise, rigorous methodology applied here to my tier list. Alright, Paymoneywubby. He's basically like a scuffed H3 clone, you know, does like reaction videos. I feel like whatever content he's reviewing or talking about is always way more interesting on its own than whatever he has to say. Like if you took him and his opinions out of the equation, it would make for better videos. He just seems really boring. I don't know, he's the kind of YouTuber, to borrow a phrase from XQC, is a pandering Penelope. You know, kind of like Critical, just says whatever predictable opinion that is probably going to be the common consensus, except way less charismatic, way less funny. Okay, I think I'm being way too mean now. It's just, I don't get why he's big. I don't know, maybe if it was like 2014 or 2015 and there weren't already a million H3 clones, you know, the YouTubers would just cherry pick like the most obviously super cringe things online and then just like make faces at it for about 15 minutes, like that's their input. I don't see the appeal in that. It's just like I feel like every single one of his videos I've already watched before I've even clicked it. But yeah, not for me. Okay, E, I guess. At least his videos aren't like 3 hours long, so that's like keeping him away from an F. Oh, also he does the whole, oh, YouTube never pays me and I'm always demonetized dance, which I think is a load of shit. Especially if you don't talk about anything super controversial all the time. It's just not that hard to not say fuck in the first 30 seconds. All these massive YouTubers, most of them make a shit ton of money, alright? Don't let them tell you otherwise. They're almost always lying about it. Why? So they appear more relatable. That's my theory. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay, I'm gonna start going through these a bit quicker. Alright, DisguisedToast. I like him. He's funny. His YouTube has been absolutely popping off with Among Us. I can see why. It's pretty good content. It's fun to watch. I found him through TFT. He was fun to watch there too. You may think all this praise warrants him an A or an S. Unfortunately, he streams on Facebook, and I'm never going near there, so I give him a B. Okay, MoonMoon, the god gamer himself. Unironically though, actually very good at games. One of the few content creators I actually can get entertained by just watching him play a single player game or whatever. Like watching him play Doom Eternal on Ultra Nightmare was great. Pretty funny, very likable. He seems like a very rare case of actually being an adult on Twitch, so that's cool. The only downsides is he's often playing a game I don't really care about, and his YouTube channel is just completely dead for some reason. He never uploads like stream highlights or anything. I'd probably check those out if he did. On the balance of things, MoonMoon gets an A. Get in there, boy. Okay, Michael Reeves. He's funny, he makes good stuff, but I don't really care about robots or programming. And once you've seen a video of him getting tased, you've kind of seen them all. So that's a C, fam. Alright, Sneako. I found him like at around 2013 or 2014 or some shit. And he was just a really small channel doing like gameplay commentaries at the time. But he was different. Like I was like, oh, this guy will definitely blow up because he could commentate his ass off. He looks at things with a little bit of a different angle, and I can see where he's coming from a lot of the time. He talks about all sorts of stuff like social issues but I almost always completely disagree, and he ends up often saying a lot of dumb shit, especially politically. Like I completely disagree with him. Pretty sure he voted for Trump in 2016, and certainly this time around he's been doing the whole like, oh, I'm not voting, both sides are exactly the same bullshit. Like I kind of understand, you know, people feeling disaffected, you know, feeling like they're not properly represented, like their institutions are failing them, people in power being corrupt, but you know, activism, voting, those are the ways you fix that. It's not always going to be exactly perfect, but it moves things in a better direction. And that's how you make legitimate long-term impact, is pushing for these things. It's funny, Noam Chomsky had an argument recently with a couple of far leftists, like very anti-Biden people. And I listened to a bit of it, and it was so confusing to me because he highlighted, you know, just why it is monumentally important, particularly this time around, to vote. And the podcast host just didn't engage with the arguments and just kept going on random tangents. God, it's so weird to me that America doesn't have mandatory voting. You Yanks are fucking weird. Also, it's incredible how far the perceptions of Biden having dementia or being mentally compromised has gotten. Of course, it'd be nice if he wasn't 77, but frankly, I don't see like this mentally handicapped person. The guy has had a lifelong stutter, so yeah, he stammers a bit and he has verbal gaffes. Especially when constantly interrupted. You know, that can fuck with someone's eloquence when they have a stutter. But if you listen to him speak when given time to actually answer questions, especially outside of the debates, like he honestly seems very lucid. And he seems fit too. Like, have you seen him riding a bike? He looks healthy, man. I don't get the whole like sighing and apathy around Biden, especially online. I feel like that was a narrative that built up early on and just kind of stuck. Because he's like an old white guy or whatever. Like every time I hear, like it seems like anyone voting for him, they always say that, oh, they're doing it reluctantly just to get Trump out. But honestly, like listen to him, read the policies. He seems pretty cool. I mean, he's running on a very progressive platform, so I don't know. People just want to be mad, I guess. All right, back to Sneako. He seems interesting, but also kind of dumb, so I don't know. I'll give him like a C. His videos are fairly entertaining, and he seems like a funny, cool dude. Gus Johnson, one of those really popular on Reddit types, I think. But genuinely has some really funny memes. Not every video is great, but sort of comes with the territory of doing short skits. Either you get a chuckle out of them or you don't. But I like his stuff. I'll give him an A. Alright, Tyler1, T1. I think he's pretty funny. Like a natural, funny, just entertaining dude. 6'5", alpha as fuck all around the board. I watched him quite a lot in around 2016, 2017 when he used to do variety shit. But now he plays League, so that's a C. Okay, DrDisrespect. Now, I don't really know about his day-to-day content. I don't really watch him, but straight away he gets an S tier. He has produced some of the best memes. The songs, the dances, the shungite, the filming people in bathrooms, the getting banned from Twitch out of nowhere, the stupid mistakes, man. The drama, just so many great memes. I mean, yeah, he sometimes promotes conspiracies and talked about David Icke in glowing terms, but, you know, maybe a little bit off his rocker, but I take all that into account and it's still an S tier. What can I say? You can't keep the two-time down. So in going through this tier list, you guys may have started to understand what I kind of value in content, especially YouTube content. Unless I just find you really funny, what I value is someone being able to make interesting points or arguments about some situation and then being able to explain that well. You'll also notice that there's not a lot of women on this list. I'm not sure if that says something about me or something about the creators in this space. Hey, maybe the Squad W was in me all along. Alright, let's get to the spicy stuff, the political Andes, the political content creators. Now, I used to watch most of these people a lot more a couple years ago. I don't watch them as much anymore. I would say almost all of these people are more explicitly political than I am in their content, in my opinion. The ins and outs of everyday politics I don't care about too much. I'll read the news for about 5 minutes a day, and then usually that's it for me. I guess in order to analyze my relationship with these people's content, you should know a bit about my political journey or whatever. Alright, so I've been like left-leaning basically all my life, you know, for pretty basic reasons such as climate change and high levels of inequality are bad. Although for most of it, I was like pretty apolitical, didn't really care too much. But around 2012, 2013, when I was a teenager, you know, around 16, 17 years old, I was very anti-PC. You know, the whole like, you can't say anything anymore, everyone is always so offended and sensitive, meh, kind of person. So I would see like SJW types on Facebook or Twitter. Actually, back then I didn't know what an SJW was, but you know, these perpetually offended people. And I'll see them even on mainstream media, or at least that's how I perceived them because of their rhetoric maybe. And I'd be like, you know, why are all these people offended? That even that word offended started to really annoy me. Like, what does that mean? What is there to be offended about kind of thing? So a bit of an anti-SJW at that time, but it was never like a super political thing for me. I was still like left-leaning. And so basically around 2015 or so, I was largely done with that anti-SJW phase, or at least I wasn't as hardcore about it, because I started to notice other people were getting like really into that kind of mentality. And here's the thing, alright, any sort of idea can have like a nugget of truth to it, so I still think that like being overly politically correct is probably a bad thing. But anytime a thought like that starts getting popularized or gets like mainstream traction, it gets circle jerked to shit and it just goes way too far. It always happens, you know, with all sorts of things. I'm inherently like very anti-circle jerky for those reasons, because I always get that sense that there's going to be a decent chunk of people that just don't understand why this idea has a grain of truth to it, and they'll just take it too far. So anyway, I started to see the types of people that would say similar things about political correctness, and I realized they didn't actually care about political correctness in an even-handed way. Being PC doesn't just belong to the left, right?
I don't call it a burqa ban. I call it an anti-masking statute.
Okay,
because
politically correct.
And I started noticing that people use that PC boogeyman as like a talking point and as a shield to push crazy ideas or attack reasonable ideas, that none of them actually cared about stuff like context or free speech or any of the stuff they claim to care about. And then around like 2016, when Trump started to become like a real possibility and anti-SJW shit online was at its peak, especially on YouTube, it was basically inescapable, and genuinely like far right stuff started becoming really prominent in the online circles I'd frequent. That was around when I started to become a lot more mindful about certain things. This is why I've made quite a few videos about like comedy, slurs, media, because I've thought about all this like a fair bit over the years. And the thing is, I've basically had like pretty consistent beliefs, fundamentally at least, for like the last 10 years. Maybe longer, depending on how aware or conscious you need to be for your beliefs to count. And these online spaces started to really worry me, you know, the now famous YouTube pipeline from gamer to anti-SJW to, you know, conservative types like Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, Crowder, and then all the way to crazy white nationalists like Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux. No, I had a few friends who got pretty into that shit. And it really started to put me off YouTube as a whole, because my recommended feed would inevitably get some of those videos with Shapiro or Balders of Watson, whatever. You know, they were so popular for a period, especially among like gamer types. It didn't seem to matter where you were actually aligned, it'd be recommended to you regardless. And it felt like to me like the website was turning into a pit that was just going to be doomed. You know, I was like a pretty early incorporator of YouTube being like a big part of my entertainment. You know, since about 2008, 2009, I probably watched it more than regular TV. And to see it turning like this was pretty shit. And when I discovered some of these people, it was very, what's the word, like refreshing or validating. It was just really good for me to see like, oh, you know, there is a space for this kind of thing on this website, that not everyone here is going to be completely insane forever. So yeah, I probably found most of these people around late 2017, 2018 maybe. You know, I watched a fair bit of them around that time, and it was very cathartic. You know, seeing people push back on certain popular narratives on the website. And in a certain way, you know, very methodical, not overly emotional, in some cases kind of edgy or funny. And I knew that would have like a broader appeal, especially among like gamer types. So yeah, the rise of like a lot of these creators gave me like a pretty good feeling. Now that being said, Now the anti-SJWs, so I guess just SJWs, now there's a lot of them on YouTube, and there's a lot of them that are pretty cringe. I guess some of them aren't really SJWs as much as they are like hardcore anti-capitalists. But yeah, it's kind of gone full circle where a lot of these creators had to become big through the value of their arguments, because back then they were kind of going against the grain. But now that they sort of popularized that space, there's a lot of other creators who have really shit, feel-good, circle-jerky arguments, which appeals to a section of the fan base that those other initial guys built up, but like in a really shitty way. You can probably guess the type of person I'm talking about. You know, the Peter Coffin types, basically. But anyway, let's start rating these people, and we can start with Destiny. He is probably best known for his debates. He's a very good debater. Some of those debates are absolutely cancer, but hilarious and very entertaining to watch. He argues off the cuff really well in a live setting. I think his skills makes his like thing online pretty unique. You know, there are a million video essay people who can calmly say their piece in a video, but not many people I think can do what he does well. In a weird way, he kind of sometimes reminds me of Jon Stewart a bit. Of course, not really on the same level, to be fair, but if you guys have seen like clips of him on Fox News, you know, either talking to Bill O'Reilly or Chris Wallace or whatever, he'd have these moments where he like will word something really well. He was just like charismatic and funny. Destiny has a bit of that. Now, despite that, he sometimes will say something that sort of shoots himself in the foot. I've obviously already been through this a little bit with the N-word arc stuff where I criticized them a bit. And I stand by those criticisms mostly. Some people got really mad at that video and said, oh no, he did clarify the, oh, I said the N-word all the time, I don't give a fuck statement. And I know he did, but in the immediate aftermath of that clip going viral, I don't think he did, and certainly not well enough. It felt like he kept trying to fight people on the actual argument of the private language stuff, rather than unequivocally making a statement that, no, I don't just say the N-word all the time, I was wrong to say that. That clip, bad. Which I think was a bit of a sticking point for some people, because it may have been like unclear what he was actually defending, whether it was his position or that clip. That clip I think is very hard to defend, but his actual position I think it's easily defensible and probably not even super controversial, but maybe I'm wrong about that. He did eventually kind of do those things, but it felt like it took a while to get there. Yeah, it just felt like for too much of that drama, at least at the early part, people were like talking past each other, and I feel he could have done more to mitigate that, but now, that's not to say people still wouldn't have attacked him for it. But yeah, I guess it's like a minor nitpick of his how he like words certain things or how he conducts himself at times. Like he seems to have very little regard for how he comes across at times, which I mean, that's fine, I guess, but it doesn't really make sense to me that you think you're right about a thing, but you don't care to explain it in a way that more people would find it easier to understand or would be more inclined to agree with you. Or at the very least, it leaves you less open to attack, right? I'm not saying you need to like be disingenuous or be dishonest or put on a wacky YouTuber voice or treat them like they're children, but there's got to be like a middle ground there somewhere, right? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he knows, and I'm sure he probably practices it to some extent. So, but you know, I think one such moment like cost him his Twitch partnership, which I think is kind of a bad thing, and I hope it doesn't mean that he loses relevance there over time, because in some way he's been like a decent part of why there aren't any popular hardcore conservatives on there. He's sort of like the person who popularized and was kind of like a gatekeeper to politics on Twitch, and I think his voice, even though it's like antagonistic and edgy or whatever, I think it's an important one there. And I wouldn't want to see it like replaced or overtaken by more harmful people. As for more general shit, can be an absolute content machine at times, and other times is extremely dull. Never seems to play a cool game. Always some boring shit. And when he does play a cool game, he's just bad at making it fun to watch. For me, anyway. Oh! He said some real dumb shit about bidets. That really stood out to me. He said that, what was it? Liking bidets is just a white person Reddit meme, that they're actually not that good. I'm sorry, that's just factually incorrect. Firstly, bidets are like not used by the whitest people. Like Anglo, Scandinavians, a lot of the rest of the world do use them. I think his argument was something like, I don't need to be that clean down there. And it's like, no one says anything about need, right? I don't need to have a shower every day either. In terms of pure health, like I think I'd probably be completely fine showering every few days, like 2 or 3 times a week. But that's still kind of gross. Even if you don't necessarily smell super bad, as, you know, some people don't if they don't shower for a couple days, but you still feel gross, right? Similarly, with a bidet, you actually feel like, you know, a civilized modern human being with some dignity, you know, not like some kind of animal. You know, there are 2 types of people. People who think they're pretty cool, neat things, and Neanderthalic, backwards, filthy savages. I'm sorry, that's just the truth. On a stack and a half. Anyway, overall on the balance of things, I'll give them a solid B. A B for beta. The good shit is real good shit, but there's way too much boring filler. Okay, Contrapoints. I like her. I think she's smart. I think she makes good points. I think she explains them well. I don't think she's really ever said anything that I super disagree with, which is really rare. I mean, I'm sure there has to be something, but there's nothing I've come across yet, I don't think. As for her content, I can really recognize that she makes like pretty niche, nuanced topics appealing and understandable to a broad audience. But I personally just don't like things that are very like showy from YouTubers unless they are crazy funny to me, which unfortunately she's not. Like long acted out bits where people dress up and do characters and stuff. I don't know. It's just a personal thing. That there's some exceptions maybe, but mostly I don't care for that kind of thing. You know, watching her is kind of like going to the theater to watch a play, and I hate plays. You know, it's the same reason why I've never been able to sit through a single philosophy tube video. That kind of thing is just, yeah, not my cup of tea. But even in that respect, though, she is way better than most others I've come across. Like, she doesn't make me cringe or anything. It's just kind of, like, boring. So I'm often willing to tolerate it in her case. That sounds so dismissive. Like, oh, yes, I tolerate you. But you know what? Overall, despite that negative, I'll give her an A. She gets bumped up a lot because I respect the sheer positive impact she's had on this platform. I think she's one of the more reasonable political creators. So yeah. All right, Azan Peaker, Destiny's arch nemesis. You know what's weird? With the fans that were basically unironically shipping them as like best friends or whatever, and they were super upset when they had that falling out. Yeah, I see you in LSF. Yeah, I don't know. You guys are fucking weirdos. I think there is an argument to be made that there's space for people that appeal to the left in different ways. You know, Hassan is more emotional. He does appeal in a more aesthetic way, not just the fact that he's very good looking, but he networks better. He probably is more likable to a general audience than someone like Destiny. Of course, he is the biggest political voice now on Twitch, way bigger than Destiny, which is hilarious. As for his content, I haven't watched that much. His style is just not one that really appeals to me much. And he used to have like all these like hammer and sickle and all this sorts of stuff on his page, and it was very off-putting. I don't like that whole thing where you like call each other comrade and all that shit. I don't know. You guys know if you watch my stuff that I never really liked that sort of placing these weird labels and this weird posturing online. This whole like, oh, let me put out a marker so I can identify myself as one of you in this particular kind of way. Like, you know, whether that's calling each other comrade or waving a flag around, whatever it is. Yeah, I've always felt really weird about that kind of stuff. Although I think Hassan has deleted those emotes and like has changed his art around, but still, that was something that immediately kind of put me off. Anyway, from what I've seen, he's sometimes pretty funny, good sense of humor. Seems to have some issues answering simple questions in a straightforward, succinct manner. So for instance, I saw a bit of his appearance on the H3 podcast, and he said something about not liking the existence of billionaires. And Ethan pressed him on that a little bit, you know, to expand what he means. You know, basically, do you think billionaires existing is an issue? And he goes on this long-ass tangent about the Nordic model and how they have more billionaires per capita and the American dream and this and that. But he doesn't actually answer the question. So Ethan asks him again, you know, are billionaires an issue? And he finally says, oh, well, I wouldn't rip them from their homes. And if inequality is solved and everything gets funding, then maybe it's okay. But, and then he goes on this long tangent again. I don't know, that kind of thing just comes off really poorly to me. That either he hasn't thought it through or doesn't know or just wants to appease certain sections of his audience. I'm not saying necessarily that is what is happening, but it comes off a little bit that way to me. Yeah, those things kind of put me off a bit, but more generally, he's pretty funny to watch play games and stuff, especially because, when he's bad at them and he molds. Oh, he did comment on a video of mine, which is on my Linity video, actually, which is pretty funny. All right, so Hassan's rating, I'll give him like a D, I guess. I just don't watch him enough to put him anywhere higher, to be honest. All right, Shaun and Jen, The Skull. Really good videos. Breaks down far-right talking points very meticulously, very clearly. Genuinely just thorough, good dismantling. One of the channels that first like really made me think, oh shit, this is like refreshing, you know. Apparently they might be insane on Twitter, but I haven't looked into it, and who isn't insane on Twitter, to be fair. Anyway, really good stuff, but they don't upload nearly enough. So down a point from A to B. Alright, Jreg. I've watched maybe like 10 or 15 videos of his. I guess you'd describe his stuff as political satire, but I don't actually think that's what his videos actually are. At least as like a broader collective, because usually, you know, traditional political satire comes with like a strong point or a few strong points, like Orange Man bad. I don't think Jreg really does that. Again, at least in his broader work. Like I still can't confidently guess what his actual positions are, so I wouldn't call it political satire in a traditional sense. I think he more so makes a point about general online discourse, about how unhealthy online life is. I think that's what his message, for the most part, is. From the dozen or so videos I've seen, there's a lot of like a meta underpinning message of like about parasocial relationships and about the nature of what you're doing by consuming his content. I feel like he's a little overly doomerish with all that, but maybe he has a better perspective because I think he's a few years younger than me and is maybe more in touch with Zoomers who, you know, didn't really know a life outside of the internet. You know, I don't really see his content appealing to older people who aren't, you know, very active and aware of online subcultures. I also think his content is probably generally harmful. Not just that he might have a bunch of extremist fans, which I think he does, but like genuinely I think if you engage in his content a lot, you're committing self-harm. Because of how I think he is the worst aspects of what his satire takes aim at. He probably knows it too. He's like, you know, the meme is that he's operating on 7 different layers of irony or whatever. It's probably intentional, but that doesn't change the fact. Like, I think his broader body of work is probably just fucking depressing, but maybe I'm wrong. Probably most of his fans just like watch it for the, you know, the funny meme or whatever. I mean, I think he's clever, but again, not my sense of humor. Out of those 10 or 15 videos I've watched, I've maybe done like a short exhale through my nose in laughter, like 2 or 3 times. Most of it I find pretty boring and unfunny, and some of it I genuinely find very cringe, not gonna lie. But hey, I respect the creativity. He definitely has his niche. But yeah, not for me. Overall, I give him a D. Alright, let's rate some of the established antagonists of this channel. You know, people I've already talked a lot of shit about. Let's start with Leafy. Obviously garbage. I've already spoken about him a fair bit on this channel, so I'll just give him E. He's just not an F because, at the very least, he's created a bunch of drama, and that's like interesting at least. And there have been some funny memes that came out of all that shit. Alright, TheQuartering. Just absolute dog shit all around. Complete F. I think I compared him to the Sun tabloid newspaper before, and I think that's a very apt comparison. Just appealing to the lowest common denominator, just shits out garbage. The only thing worse than the fact that someone actually bothers to make the garbage he does is the fact that there are people willing to watch. It doesn't bear thinking about it if you want to remain optimistic about humanity, to be honest. Alright, Trainwrecks. Okay, this will be kind of interesting. Obviously, I already made a big video about him. I do have some regrets about that video. For one, it's too long. I shouldn't have included all that stuff about the Mitch Jones drama because frankly, I don't know that much about it. Like, I should have known better than to insert myself in that garbage. I don't really even care about it. The rest of it, I think, is mostly fine. Maybe a little too harsh, but mostly fair criticisms, I think. Now about Train, he's not as bad as he used to be, at least outwardly, and I predicted that would happen in my Aftermath video. I personally think is to keep brand safe and remain relevant because that's how you kind of got to be on Twitch now. Because he never seems to acknowledge his past mistakes or whatever, but maybe not. Maybe he actually has changed. Either way, it doesn't matter. He has gotten better. He's an absolute networking god. I don't know how he does it. He's like great at greasing the wheels or something behind the scenes. Because everyone seems to follow him around. He always gets great guests on his podcast. That being said, I still think he's fake as fuck as a person. I'm almost 100% sure of that. I usually don't care much, but with Train it feels like particularly scummy, particularly manipulative. That's my gut sense. And I still see signs of it. How he words certain things, or he frames certain situations. Or maybe he's just delusional as hell. Like, he will say stuff that makes me think he has to be lying. So I'll give you examples. He recently stated that he is the most hated streamer on Twitch ever or some shit. And he cited the fact that a thread on LSF of him donating money to charity turned into a hate thread. Now firstly, not even close to being the most hated person on Twitch. Pokimane, Alinity, they were super hated on LSF, got it way worse than Train did. Alinity especially got some of the largest threads, just full on hate threads. Not to mention outside of Twitch, on like the YouTube scene or whatever, like they got so much shit, like it's not even close. I mean, if you look up videos of Trainwreck's criticism, what do you find? You find like my video, my measly 15,000 viewer video. Whereas with Alinity and Pokimane, you find literally a bajillion of them with a zillion views each. I would even argue that Destiny's probably more hated than Train. Okay, now about that charity hate thread, that so-called hate thread. I looked at that thread. It was full of positive comments talking about how he's a great person deep down. There was like maybe 1 or 2 negative ones that were completely downvoted to shit. Now, I will admit, there is these days from time to time a fair bit of hate for Trainer and LSF. They used to simp for him like crazy a year or 2 ago, but that has changed. There are legit hate threads nowadays. But again, that thread he was referencing was not at all one of those hate threads. And the thing is, people are willing to move on from his like past or whatever, but he's such a paranoid victim, Andy. It's like his whole career is an Among Us game, and he just sees imposters everywhere conspiring against him. Anyway, I should stop. I don't want to pile on, rehash shit about someone I've already spoken about at length. Okay, the actual content he provides. For the most part, complete dog shit. To be fair, I think he can be pretty funny at times. It's just really rare, and most of the time he's insufferable. His podcast? Ugh, painful. Why do all these Twitch podcasts and panels have like 12 people on at once? It's so garbage. So I check it out from time to time, because it gets a lot of viewers, and he keeps getting like really good guests, like people you'd think are out of his league, and it keeps tricking me into clicking. Like somewhat recently he had a bunch of NBA players on, and I was like, all right, I'll check that out. That sounds kind of cool, right? Like I like hearing inside stories from successful athletes and stuff, like how their world works or whatever. Even if it's casual talk, it can be interesting. And Train just kept derailing his own goddamn podcast. Like he kept just harping on and emphasizing about how much he loved these NBA dudes, about how he can imagine them being real friends, real great friends. And it was just uncomfortable and cringe, brown-nosing, sycophantic, weird shit. Like literally every 2 seconds he'd pause and be like, oh, you guys would be so cool to hang out with. I can just tell. On a stack, bro. We should just hang out one day, get some steak, I'll suck your... Oh, no, never mind. Instead of having like a normal conversation and letting a rapport and chemistry like naturally build, he would keep interjecting with that shit. It was like he was trying to convince them and himself that they were actually best friends. I don't know. It was weird. I guess that shit works because he seems to be, as I said, great at networking. People are maybe suckers for that dumb shit. But damn, like if someone treated me that way, I'd be insanely suspicious. Like, dude, what are you trying to get out of me? And I don't know, other streamers on the podcast too, especially smaller ones, suck up back to him so much too. Like they pussyfoot around him a lot, especially when it comes to his past controversies. No one brings up like the very clear bad shit he did. They will just be like, don't you think Squad W is sometimes used in a sexist way? It's like no one actually cares about the emote. Why don't you talk about those rants? And when he replied, shut the fuck up already to girls that were talking about how they get harassed. But hey, it's Train, you know, he sucks up to people for clout, and others do it back to him. Shamelessness. But then again, if you keep a close eye, you start to notice a lot of Twitch and YouTube is about, like, playing that game, groveling towards certain people, or manufacturing drama. Anyway, maybe I've been too harsh on him in general, maybe even in this section, I don't know. Listen, he does do some good things, like charity or whatever, and he seems to moderate his chat a lot better now, so I guess I'm just hating. I'm bugging. But yeah, I'll say an E. Alright, that's my final tier list. I'm pretty happy with it. I was gonna have a separate section for these last 3 guys, but I'm pretty tired right now, so you know what, they're all pretty cool. They probably all get around like an A or B. I like Midlife Crisis the most. I think he's funny. Okay, now let's talk about the final bonus person. The final content creator is me. Okay, it's kind of weird to judge my own content. It's hard to separate that creator side and why I make these and view it as a pure product for consumption, right? Okay, what do I like about my content? I like that there's a good variety in both the subject matter of the videos and the form of the videos. Although I think that's really bad for like growth, I think you should be focusing on just 1 or 2 super niche topics, or at least the format needs to be a little bit more consistent. But what I really enjoy about all this is that I feel like I can make literally anything I want. And that's partly the freedom of having a small channel, you know, and in some ways that's the freedom of not having one video or one type of video go super viral. You don't feel like obligated to do a certain kind of thing. Ah man, this is hard because if I had to guess my main appeal to some of my longtime subscribers, it would be that I make decent arguments. I'm a pretty reasonable guy. I've always been like the measured, calm person in my family, so I don't like easily fall into like hype or faux outrage, and I think I call that sort of thing out pretty well when I see it, like faux outrage. Also that my opinions come with some conviction. You know, I don't pussyfoot around, and I'm pretty genuine about them, and I think that comes across. But I can't really sell that, you know? I've got opinions, okay, great, but that's not particularly engaging, right? You know, why listen to this guy when there's a million other people doing this shit? But it is what it is. Also, if I'm ever wrong, or if you disagree with an opinion of mine, which of course will happen at various points, in those cases I probably come off as really condescending or dismissive. That probably can put some people off. You know what? Let's get into it. Let's talk about some of the negatives of my content. I should probably make more higher effort videos instead of these casual ones. See, the thing is, they usually do about as well as the casual ones with my existing audience in terms of views, but they have a much higher chance of getting in new subs or of getting traction on Reddit or for a random YouTube person to engage with it. So I should be doing a lot more of those, but I think that wouldn't be fulfilling for me. And I think in general, I don't upload enough anyway. Like a video every 2 or 3 weeks really isn't good enough. This is why when people tell me you deserve more subs, I don't really believe them. Now look, of course there is a lot of luck involved in YouTube. Some people are exceptionally lucky, some people are exceptionally unlucky. And sometimes the algorithm will bless your soul and your video will pop off for no reason. But I think to a fairly large extent, you get what you put in. And if you're going to treat it like a hobby, like I currently do, I'm not going to get very far, right? I think 2K subs is about where I ought to be. Like, I don't think people realize how much a lot of YouTubers actually hustle. Like, if you're full-time at this, you're almost certainly working really hard. And you know what? It's not 2009. To get anywhere today, you kind of got to do that. Anyway, back to the negatives. My editing could be better. For sure, visually, a lot could be better. I probably shouldn't use gameplay as much as I do. I shouldn't use some of the visual filler that I do. I just use a phone camera in a poorly lit room. What's with all the dim purple lighting everyone has these days? You know, streamers and Contrapoints wannabes and all that. Like, everyone does that shit. Anyway, what I mostly value are the points I'm making. I just love sharing my opinions. And the editing is like the worst part of the video making process, especially the more tedious editing. If it's like a funny meme I'm doing, like a 10-second thing, that's kind of fun to create. But the whole just like finding visuals to put in place and is just so boring, and it's the part that takes the longest, mostly not just because of the time commitment, but I just put off doing it. The rest of it I really enjoy. Like, I love rambling into this mic. I love getting my opinions out there. In some ways, it's kind of like a catharsis or like a therapy almost. Like, when I would see things that annoy me, I used to like yell at my screen almost, or I would like share it with a friend and be like, what the hell is this? But now I get to like have that documented to the world. Like, and the fact that some people seem to appreciate it, like that's so fucking cool. Some of my videos, especially some of my older ones, I think are very bloated and they kind of overstay their welcome. But you know, for the most part, I like my videos. I think, you know, some of the older stuff is a bit cringe, but for the most part, I can like take a step back and be like, yeah, this was decent shit. So I'll give me a C. There you go. All right, I've been talking for way too long. This has been basically a podcast. I'm tired, I'm hungry, so I'm just going to end it here. Oh God, I got to edit this too. All right, anyway, peace guys.